My son-in-law stole my $90 million lottery ticket, tried to sell my dead wife's house to developers, and filed papers to have me locked in a nursing home. He thought I was just a retired old teacher with no fight left. He forgot one thing. In 38 years of teaching, I had shaped over 4,000 students. Lawyers, journalists, judges, and every single one of them remembered Mr. Whitfield. That evening, Ryan stood in my kitchen. The kitchen where my wife Dorothy once painted watercolors by the window, and he looked me dead in the eyes. His voice was flat, cold, like he was reading terms from a contract. "You have 72 hours, George. Sign over the deed or I will have you declared incompetent by Friday. Your choice." I sat there at the table. My hands were folded. My breathing was steady. And I smiled. Not because I was brave, because I knew something he did not. The winning ticket was never in his hands. It was in mine. Pressed between the pages of journal number 40, right next to my wife's name. Ryan thought he had won. He had no idea he was standing inside a trap 10 years in the making. Welcome to my story. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from today. A quick note. This is a fictional story, with dramatized elements for emotional impact and meaningful life lessons. Any resemblance to real names or situations is purely coincidental. But the message behind it, that is what truly matters. Now let me take you back to the beginning. My name is George Whitfield. I am 73 years old, and I spent 38 years teaching Advanced Placement United States history at Savannah Arts Academy here in Savannah, Georgia. If you have never been to Savannah, let me paint you a picture. Cobblestone streets shaded by live oaks draped in Spanish moss. The smell of magnolia and salt air drifting in from the river. Houses that have stood since before the Civil War, their bones still strong, their stories still whispering through the walls. I loved this city the way some men love the ocean. Completely. Without reservation. And I loved teaching the way my wife Dorothy loved painting. With every fiber of who I was. 38 years. That is 4,112 students who sat in my classroom. 4,000 young minds who learned that history is not just dates and battles. History is patterns. History is cause and effect. History is the study of how people behave when they think no one is watching. I taught them to read between the lines, to question the official story, to look for the evidence that powerful people try to bury. I taught them that empires do not fall because of armies at the gates. Empires fall because of betrayal from within, because someone trusted gets greedy, because the people inside the walls stop paying attention. I should have applied that lesson to my own life sooner, but I will get to that. There is one more thing you need to know about me. I have kept a journal every single day since September 3rd, 1984. That was my first day of teaching. I was 23 years old, terrified, standing in front of 32 teenagers who looked at me like I was a substitute they could destroy. That night, I wrote in a plain black notebook. Day 1. Survived. Barely. Tomorrow, I will be better. And I wrote the next day. And the day after that. 40 years of entries, 40 journals, filled cover to cover. Every lesson I taught. Every student who made me proud. Every argument with the principal. Every dinner Dorothy cooked. Every birthday. Every funeral. Every lie Ryan Mercer ever told under my roof. 40 journals. 40 years of truth written in my own hand. Ryan did not know about them. He never thought to ask what the old man was scribbling at his desk every night. He never imagined that every word he said, every scheme he whispered into his phone, every promise he broke, was being recorded. Not on tape, not on camera, in ink. In the careful handwriting of a man who spent his life teaching people to pay attention to evidence. History taught me that the truth always surfaces. It just needs someone patient enough to document it. I was patient. For 10 years I was patient, but that patience had an expiration date. And Ryan had just reached it. Let me tell you about Dorothy. Dorothy Ann Whitfield. Born in Charleston, raised in Savannah, died too soon in the house she loved more than anywhere else on earth. She was an art restorer by trade, spent 26 years at the Telfair Museum downtown, bringing old paintings back years of grime to reveal the colors underneath. She used to say that beauty never disappears, it just gets buried, and all you need is patience and the right tools to find it again. We met in 1983 at a fundraiser for the Savannah Historical Society. I was 22, fresh out of the University of Georgia with a teaching degree, and no idea what I was doing with my life. She was 21, studying art conservation at the Savannah College of Art and Design, and she had paint under her fingernails and a laugh that made every man in the room turn his head. I asked her to dance. She said no. I asked again. She said, "You are persistent, Mr. Whitfield." I said, "I am a history teacher. We study patterns, and the pattern here is that you keep smiling when you say no." She laughed. We danced. 6 months later, we were married. For the first 6 years, we rented a small apartment on Drayton Street. Saved every dollar we could. Dorothy worked at the museum. I taught at Savannah Arts Academy. We dreamed about buying a house. Not just any house. A Savannah house. One of those grand old Victorians with the tall windows and wraparound porches that line the historic squares. In the spring of 1989, we found her. 714 Abercorn Street. She was in terrible shape. The roof leaked in 3 places. The porch sagged on the left side. Half the windows were boarded up, and the original stained glass in the dining room had a crack running through it like a river on a map. The paint was peeling. The garden was dead. The previous owner had abandoned her 10 years prior. She looked like a woman who had given up on being loved. Dorothy stood on the sidewalk, looked up at that house, and said 5 words that changed our lives. "George, this is the one." I saw a money pit. She saw a masterpiece waiting to be uncovered. We bought her for $62,000. Every penny of our savings plus a loan from the bank that made me lose sleep for a decade. And then we went to work. Dorothy and I spent 3 years restoring that house. Every weekend. Every holiday. Every summer break. I handled the structural work. New joists for the porch. Rewiring the entire second floor. Replacing the plumbing that had not been touched since 1947. Dorothy handled the beauty. She stripped 14 layers of paint from the original crown molding by hand. She spent 3 months alone, restoring the stained glass in the dining room. Piece by piece, matching the original colors from a photograph she found in the Chatham County archives. She painted the walls in colors she mixed herself. Sage green for the parlor. Cream for the hallways. A deep burgundy for our bedroom that she said reminded her of old wine and slow evenings. The house sat in the heart of Savannah's historic district. That meant every change we made had to meet preservation standards. Every window, every shingle, every piece of trim had to be historically accurate. Dorothy loved that. She treated every detail like a sacred trust. "We are not the owners of this house, George," she would say. "We are its caretakers. It was here before us. It will be here after us. Our job is to keep it alive." In 1992, 3 years after we bought it, Dorothy painted a watercolor of the finished house. She stood across the street on a Sunday morning and painted it exactly as it looked. The white porch gleaming, the tall windows catching the light, the magnolia tree in the front yard just beginning to bloom. She framed it and hung it in the foyer. So it was the first thing anyone saw when they walked in. "That is who she is," Dorothy said, standing back to admire it. "That is who we helped her become." Our daughter Natalie was born in that house in 1986. Well, not literally in the house. Natalie came 3 weeks early, and I nearly ran 2 red lights getting Dorothy to Memorial Hospital. But she grew up in that house, took her first steps in the parlor, drew her first pictures on the kitchen floor with Dorothy's pastels, Had her first heartbreak crying on the porch swing at 16. Every room in that house held a memory. Every floorboard knew our footsteps. Dorothy used to say that a house absorbs the life lived within it. That the walls remember. That if you pressed your ear to the plaster, you could hear the echo of every laugh, every argument, every whispered goodnight. I believed her. I still do. We lived in that house for 26 years together. 26 years of Sunday dinners and Christmas mornings and late nights grading papers at the kitchen table while Dorothy painted upstairs in her studio. 26 years of building a life so solid I thought nothing could shake it. Dorothy was wrong about one thing. She said the house would survive anything. She said it had weathered the Civil War, 2 hurricanes, and 100 years of neglect. She said it would outlast us both. The house survived. But Dorothy did not. Dorothy died on a Tuesday morning in October of 2015. A stroke. Massive and sudden, the doctor said. Like a switch being flipped. One moment she was standing in her studio on the 2nd floor, cleaning a brush, humming something I could not quite hear from downstairs. The next moment there was a sound. A soft thud, like a book falling from a shelf. I found her on the floor beside her easel. Her eyes were open, but she was not there anymore. The brush was still in her hand. There was cadmium yellow on her fingertips. She was 68 years old. We had been married for 32 years. The ambulance came in 4 minutes. I rode with her to Memorial Hospital, holding her hand the entire way. The paramedic kept talking to me, but I could not hear him. All I could hear was the sound of Dorothy humming that morning. The last ordinary sound of our life together. She never woke up. The doctors said there was too much damage. Too fast. Nothing they could do. I sat beside her bed for 11 hours, holding her hand, talking to her about nothing. About the garden. About the leak in the upstairs bathroom I kept promising to fix. About the watercolor she had been working on. I told her I loved her. I told her I was sorry I had not said it more often. I told her the house would miss her. At 9:17 that evening, she was gone. The funeral was held at First Baptist Church on Chippewa Square. Pastor James Coleman officiated. He had known Dorothy for 20 years. His voice cracked twice during the eulogy. The church was full. Dorothy had that effect on people. She made everyone feel seen. Natalie flew in from Atlanta the morning of the funeral. She stood beside me at the graveside, her hands squeezing mine so tight I could feel her pulse. She looked like Dorothy in that moment. The same dark hair, the same way of pressing her lips together when she was trying not to cry. After the burial, people came to the house. They brought casseroles and flowers and stories about Dorothy. How she had helped restore the stained glass at the courthouse. How she had taught a free watercolor class at the community center every summer for 15 years. How she always remembered birthdays. People stayed for hours. And then they left. And then it was quiet. The quiet was the worst part. I had never lived alone. I went from my parents' house to college to marriage. 40 years of waking up next to someone. 40 years of hearing another person breathe in the dark. And then nothing. Just the sound of the house settling. The creak of old wood. The tick of the clock in the hallway that Dorothy had found at an estate sale in 1994. I kept her studio exactly as she left it. The easel still standing. The half-finished painting still clipped to the board. Her brushes in the jar. Her smock hanging on the hook behind the door. I could not bring myself to touch any of it. Some mornings I would stand in the doorway and just look. As if she might walk back in at any moment, pick up her brush, and say, "George, stop hovering. You are making me nervous." I wrote in my journal every night. But for weeks, the entries were the same. Another day without her. The house is too quiet. That was the fall of 2015. 8 weeks of silence. 8 weeks of eating dinner alone at a table, meant for 3. 8 weeks of walking past her studio and feeling the absence like a physical weight on my chest. Then in November, my phone rang. It was Natalie. And I knew something was wrong before she said a single word. I could hear it in the way she breathed. Quick and shallow. The way she used to breathe as a child when she was trying not to cry. Dad. Her voice cracked. Ryan got laid off. The company let go of the whole sales division. We are 3 months behind on rent. I do not know what we are going to do. Ryan Mercer. My son-in-law. They had been married for 4 years at that point. He worked in commercial real estate sales for a mid-size firm in Atlanta. Or rather, he had worked there. Natalie met him at a friend's wedding when she was 29. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who shook your hand firmly and looked you straight in the eye and made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. I liked him at first. Most people did. I did not hesitate. "Come home, sweetheart," I said. "Both of you. Stay as long as you need." "Are you sure, Dad?" "It would just be for a few months. Until Ryan finds something new, I am sure. This house is too quiet anyway. It will be good to have family here again." 2 weeks later, the week before Thanksgiving, a rental truck pulled into the driveway at 714 Abercorn. Ryan was driving. Natalie sat in the passenger seat, looking exhausted. They had packed their entire apartment into that truck. Everything they owned. I helped Ryan carry boxes up the front steps. He was polite, energetic, grateful. "Thank you, George," he said, shaking my hand on the porch. "This means the world to us. We will be out of your hair in no time." Natalie hugged me in the foyer. She smelled like her mother's perfume. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered. "I am so sorry about this." "Do not apologize," I said. "This is your home. It always will be." That night, I wrote in my journal. November 19th, 2015. Natalie and Ryan moved in today. The house feels full again. Ryan spent a long time looking at the crown molding in the parlor, asked me how old the stained glass was, asked about the property tax assessment. Interesting questions for a man who just lost his job. I did not think much of it at the time. I was just glad to have people in the house again. Glad the silence was broken. I should have paid closer attention. The first year was fine. Better than fine. It felt like family again. Ryan helped me replace the rotted boards on the back porch. He mowed the lawn without being asked. Natalie cooked Sunday dinners, pot roast, collard greens, cornbread. We sat at the kitchen table afterward talking about the weather, about football, about Natalie's new job at an accounting firm downtown. Ryan talked about leads he was pursuing. Sales positions, management rôle. He was always on the phone, always following up on something. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. By year 2, the phone calls got quieter. Ryan started closing the bedroom door when he talked. He spent more hours on the couch scrolling through his laptop than he spent searching job boards. Natalie picked up extra hours at the firm. She came home tired. Too tired to cook most nights. Too tired to sit with me on the porch the way she used to. And Ryan started touching the house. It began small. A shelf installed in the kitchen without asking. New hardware on the bathroom door. A motion sensor light on the back porch that I had never requested. Little things. Things that could be explained as helpful. Then it grew. One Saturday in March of 2017, I came home from the hardware store and found 2 men in my parlor removing the original crown molding. The molding Dorothy had spent 6 weeks stripping by hand, layer by layer, revealing the walnut underneath. The molding that was on the Chatham County Historic Registry. I stood in the doorway. What is happening here? Ryan appeared behind me with a cup of coffee. Casual. Relaxed. "Oh, those old pieces were warping, George. I am having them replaced with something cleaner, more modern. Those are original to 1892. Dorothy restored them." Ryan sipped his coffee. "I know. But they look tired. Trust me. The new trim will open up the whole room." I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell those men to stop, to put the molding back, to get out of my house. But Natalie walked in from the kitchen and put her hand on my arm. "It is fine, Dad. Ryan knows what he is doing. He used to work in real estate, remember? I looked at my daughter. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes, and I let it go. That was my first mistake. There were many more. Over the next 2 years, Ryan replaced 4 of the original windows with modern vinyl. He painted over the sage green walls Dorothy had mixed by hand, covered them in flat gray. He removed the antique light fixtures from the hallway and installed recessed lighting that made the house look like a dentist's office. Each time, I said something. Each time, Natalie said it was fine. Each time, Ryan shrugged and called me sentimental. By year 4, 2019, Ryan had stopped asking my opinion about anything. He made decisions about the house as if it were his. He referred to it as our place when talking to his friends. He invited people over I had never met. And I would retreat to my bedroom, listening to laughter downstairs, in rooms I had built with my own hands. Natalie stopped sitting with me after dinner. She would disappear into their bedroom. I would hear them talking in low voices. The door always closed. When I caught her alone in the morning, she would smile quickly and say, "Everything is fine, Dad." But her eyes told a different story. Then came the night I found Dorothy's painting. It was a Thursday in February of 2020. Year 5. I was taking the trash out to the curb for Friday morning pickup. The can was heavy. I lifted the lid, and there it was. Dorothy's watercolor. The one she painted in 1992. The painting of our house. The one that had hung in the foyer for 28 years, so it was the first thing anyone saw when they walked in. It was face down in the garbage. A coffee stain on the back. The frame cracked. My hands trembled. I lifted it out carefully, the way you would lift a child. I wiped the frame with my sleeve. The painting itself was undamaged. Dorothy's brushstrokes, still perfect. The white porch. The magnolia tree. The stained glass window, catching morning light. I carried it inside. Ryan was on the couch watching television. He glanced up. "Oh, that old thing? I took it down last week. It did not match the new paint." I did not respond. I walked past him, up the stairs, and into my bedroom. I closed the door. I sat on the bed and held the painting against my chest, and I cried for the first time since Dorothy's funeral. Then I dried my eyes. I opened journal number 37, and I wrote, February 6th, 2020. Found Dorothy's watercolor in the trash. Ryan removed it without asking, without telling me. This is not negligence. This is erasure. He is removing her from this house, piece by piece. He is removing me. I will not let him erase her. I will document everything. Every nail he pulls. Every window he replaces. Every piece of her he throws away. I see him, and I am writing it all down. That night, something shifted in me. I stopped being a passive observer. I became a historian of my own life, recording the evidence, building the case. Not because I plan to use it, not yet, but because the truth deserves to be written down, because Dorothy deserved that much, and because a good teacher is always 3 lessons ahead of his students. By year 6, I had become invisible, not literally. My body was still there. 71 years old, still standing upright, still breathing, still taking up space. But I had stopped mattering. Ryan walked past me in the hallway without a glance. Natalie spoke to me in short sentences. "Morning, Dad." "Good night, Dad." "There is leftover pasta in the fridge." Quick words tossed over her shoulder on the way to somewhere else. I ate dinner alone most nights. I would sit at the kitchen table. The same table where Dorothy and I had shared 32 years of meals. And I would eat in silence while Ryan and Natalie sat in the living room watching television. Their laughter drifted down the hall. Sometimes Natalie's, mostly Ryan's. Loud and comfortable. The laugh of a man who owned the space he was in. My bedroom became my country. A small territory I still controlled. My desk. My lamp. My journals. Dorothy's painting. Rescued from the trash. leaning against the wall beside my nightstand, her reading glasses still in the top drawer. I would close the door at 8 each evening and sit at my desk and write. The entries got longer in those years, more detailed, more precise. March 14th, 2021. Ryan had the back fence replaced without informing me. Hired a crew. I found out when I heard power tools at 7 in the morning. He did not consult me, did not ask permission. This is my property. August 9th, 2021. Overheard Ryan on the phone. He said, quote, "We are thinking about converting the upstairs into a rental unit." End quote. He is making plans for my house without including me. January 2nd, 2022. Ryan told a guest at dinner that he and Natalie own the house. His exact words were, "We bought this place about 6 years ago. Needed a lot of work, but we fixed it up." I was sitting in the next room. He knew I could hear. Entry after entry. Year after year. I filled journals. 38 and 39. Started number 40 in January of 2024. Somewhere in year 8, I noticed something strange. My bank statements had stopped arriving in the mail. I had always received paper statements. Old habit. I liked holding the paper, checking the numbers, filing them in my desk drawer, but they stopped coming. At first I thought it was a postal error. Then I thought, perhaps the bank had switched to digital. I called them. "Mr. Whitfield," the woman said, "your mailing address was changed in our system in March of 2023. Statements are being sent to a post office box." I had never opened a post office box in my life. "What is the box number?" I asked. She told me. I wrote it down. That evening, I drove to the post office on Whitaker Street and asked the clerk who owned that box. He could not tell me directly. Privacy policy. But he did say the box had been opened using a power of attorney document. I had never signed a power of attorney. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes, my hands tight on the steering wheel. Ryan had redirected my mail. He had used a forged document to do it. For 2 years, he had been intercepting my bank statements, my tax documents, my financial correspondence. For 2 years, I had been blind to whatever he was doing with my information. I drove home and wrote the longest journal entry I had written in months. Then I closed the notebook and stared at the wall. I was afraid. Truly afraid. Not of Ryan physically, but of what he was building in the dark. What structure he was constructing with my name, my identity, my life, while I sat in my bedroom writing about the weather. The only person who kept me sane during those years was Milton Hayes. Milton lived 3 blocks east on Gordon Street. He was 76 years old, a retired professor of English literature from Savannah State University. Tall, thin, with a white beard he kept trimmed short and reading glasses perpetually perched on the end of his nose. His wife Claudia was 73, warm, sharp-tongued, the kind of woman who could insult you so politely you thanked her for it. Milton and I had been friends for 22 years. We met at a faculty mixer in 2003, discovered a mutual love of chess and bad coffee, and had been playing every Tuesday afternoon since. For the last several years, our games had moved to Chapter and Verse, a used bookstore on Bull Street that also sold lottery tickets and strong black coffee. The owner, Thomas Avery, let us use the back table by the window. We would play for 2 hours, argue about Shakespeare versus Faulkner, and drink too much caffeine. Milton was the only person who saw what was happening to me. He noticed the weight I had lost, the way I flinched when my phone rang, the way I stopped talking about the house. One Tuesday in January of 2025, Milton set down his knight and looked at me across the board. "George." His voice was serious. "How long are you going to let that man bury you alive?" I moved my bishop. "I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do. You have lost 15 pounds. You never mention Natalie anymore. And you have not invited me to your house in 3 years. 3 years, George." I said nothing. He was right. Milton leaned back in his chair. "The George Whitfield I know built a house with his bare hands, taught 4,000 students to think for themselves, wrote in his journal every single night for 40 years. That man does not hide in his bedroom, while some unemployed con artist steals his life. If I fight Ryan, I lose Natalie. Milton was quiet for a moment. Then he said softly, "George, you have already lost her." He made sure of that years ago. The words hit me like a fist, because they were true. I had known it for years. I just could not bring myself to say it out loud. Milton picked up his coffee, took a long sip. Then he pulled 2 crumpled dollar bills from his vest pocket and held them up with a grin. "You know what you need, George? A little chaos. A little divine intervention." He nodded toward the front counter where Thomas kept the lottery machine. "Come on. Let me buy you a ticket. What is the worst that could happen?" I almost laughed. "Milton, I have never bought a lottery ticket in my life. 73 years of responsible decisions. And where did 73 years of responsible decisions get you? Hiding from your own son-in-law." He stood up and pocketed the bills. "Come on, old friend. Live dangerously for $2. I looked at him, at his stubborn grin, at the crumpled bills in his hand, and something shifted. Something small and quiet, like a key turning in a lock. "Fine," I said. "But if I win, I am blaming you for everything that happens next." Milton laughed. "I will take that bet." I had never bought a lottery ticket in 73 years of living. Never saw the point. I was an engineer of my own fate. A man who believed in planning, in discipline, in cause and effect. Luck was for people who had not prepared. But that Tuesday afternoon in early March of 2025, I followed Milton to the front counter of Chapter and Verse, and I bought 2 tickets. Mega Millions. The jackpot was $90 million. Thomas Avery raised an eyebrow from behind the register. Thomas was 62. A former librarian who had opened the bookstore after retirement. Wire-rimmed glasses, elbow patches on every jacket he owned, and an encyclopedic knowledge of Southern Gothic literature. "George Whitfield buying lottery tickets," Thomas said, feeding the slips into the machine. "I have seen everything now." "Blame him," I said, nodding at Milton. "I accept full responsibility," Milton said with a grin. "And when he wins, I expect a first edition Faulkner." Thomas printed the tickets and handed them to me. 2 small slips of paper. Numbers printed in blue ink. I paid with my debit card. $4 total. Thomas gave me the receipt. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my wallet. An old habit. I kept every receipt. 38 years of filing tax returns had made me meticulous about paper trails. Milton and I walked back to the chess table. He was grinning like a man who had just pulled off a heist. "See? That was not so hard. A little chaos in your life, George. Dorothy would approve." He was right. Dorothy would have laughed. She would have said, "George, you finally did something spontaneous. Mark the calendar." We finished our chess game. I won in 23 moves. Milton accused me of cheating. Same as always. Then we packed up, and I drove home. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was quiet. Ryan's truck was gone. Natalie's car was parked by the curb. I walked inside and found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with her laptop, working on something for the firm. She looked up. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, sweetheart." I stood there for a moment, the 2 lottery tickets in my jacket pocket, and I thought about Dorothy. Today would have been her 78th birthday. March 5th. If she were alive, I would have bought her flowers. Yellow roses. Her favorite. We would have gone to dinner at the old pink house on Abercorn. She would have ordered the shrimp and grits, and I would have pretended not to notice when she stole bites from my plate. Instead, she was gone. And I was standing in her kitchen holding 2 worthless slips of paper. Or maybe not worthless. Maybe they were worth something else entirely. I pulled 1 ticket from my pocket and held it out to Natalie. "Here," I said. Happy birthday to your mother. Natalie looked at the ticket, then at me. Her face softened. For a moment, just a moment, I saw the girl she used to be. The girl who sat on my lap while I graded papers. The girl who danced with Dorothy in the kitchen on Sunday mornings. Dad, she said quietly. You bought a lottery ticket? Milton made me do it. Take one. Your mother would have wanted you to have a little luck. Natalie took the ticket from my hand. She held it gently, like it was something fragile, and she smiled. A real smile, small and shy, the way Dorothy used to smile when I surprised her with something unexpected. Thank you, Daddy, she whispered. For 3 seconds, we were a family again. Father and daughter in a kitchen filled with ghosts of the woman they both loved. 3 seconds of warmth. 3 seconds of connection. Then Ryan walked in. The back door slammed. His keys hit the counter. He saw the ticket in Natalie's hand, and his eyes narrowed. What is that? Dad bought lottery tickets, Natalie said. The warmth in her voice was already fading. He gave me one. For Mom's birthday. Ryan walked over and plucked the ticket from her fingers. He held it up, scanning the numbers the way a jeweler examines a stone. Then, he snorted. Lottery tickets. Seriously, George? He tossed the ticket back on the table. $90 million jackpot. And you think a $2 ticket is going to change anything? That is what you are spending your pension on? Scratch cards and fairy tales? I said nothing. I just looked at him. At the man who had lived rent-free in my house for 10 years. Who had never paid a single utility bill. Who ate my food and used my electricity and slept under my roof without contributing a dime. And he was mocking me for spending $2. It is just for fun, Ryan, Natalie said softly. Fun. Ryan shook his head. He opened the refrigerator, grabbed a beer, and walked out. Whatever. Waste of money. Natalie picked the ticket back up from the table. She smoothed it with her thumb. Then she tucked it into her purse without another word. I went to my bedroom, closed the door, sat at my desk. I pulled the second ticket from my pocket and opened journal number 40. I turned to the page I had written that morning. March 5th, Dorothy's birthday. I had written a short entry that morning, the same thing I wrote every year on her birthday. Happy birthday, Dorothy. I miss you. I love you. I wish you were here. I placed the lottery ticket between those pages. Pressed the journal closed. Set it back on my desk. A $2 ticket. Meaningless numbers on a meaningless slip of paper. 3 days later, those numbers would be worth $90 million. But it was not the money that would change everything. It was what Ryan did the moment he thought he was rich. That was what revealed who he truly was. Not to me. I already knew, but to everyone else who needed to see it. The scream came from the kitchen at 7:43 on a Saturday morning. I was in my bedroom, sitting at my desk, writing my morning journal entry. The pen stopped mid-sentence. It was not a scream of pain or fear. It was something else entirely. Raw shock. The sound a person makes when reality bends in a direction they never imagined possible. I set down my pen and walked to the hallway. Slowly, carefully, the way you approach a sound you cannot identify. Natalie was standing in the middle of the kitchen, her phone in one hand, the lottery ticket in the other. Her face was white. Her hands were shaking so badly, the ticket trembled like a leaf in a storm. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God. Oh my God." I stopped in the doorway. "Natalie? What is it?" She did not hear me. She was staring at the ticket, then at her phone, then at the ticket again, comparing numbers, her lips moving silently. Then Ryan was there. He came thundering down the stairs, still in his boxer shorts and a wrinkled t-shirt. He must have heard the scream, too. He pushed past me in the doorway without a glance, his shoulder knocking mine against the frame. What? What happened? He grabbed Natalie's arm. "What is going on?" "We won," Natalie whispered. Her voice was barely audible. Ryan. We won. $90 million. The world stopped. Ryan snatched the ticket from her hand. His eyes scanned the numbers once, twice, 3 times. Then he grabbed Natalie's phone and pulled up the Mega Millions website, scrolling frantically, comparing each number one by one. His breathing changed. Fast. Shallow. His hands started shaking too, but not like Natalie's. Hers was disbelief. His was hunger. Holy God, he breathed. It is real. It is actually real. $90 million. He looked up at Natalie. Then he grabbed her face in both hands and kissed her hard. Baby, we are rich. We are rich. I stood in the doorway. Neither of them looked at me. Not once. Ryan was already pacing. Already on his phone, his thumb moving fast, dialing numbers. Yeah, I need to speak to someone about a Mega Millions claim. A big one. 90 million. He walked out of the kitchen, past me again, into the living room. His voice got louder, more confident. He was asking about lawyers, financial advisors, tax implications. Natalie stood alone in the kitchen, her empty hands hanging at her sides. She looked dazed, lost, like someone who had been hit by a car and was still trying to understand what happened. I took one step toward her. Natalie, she blinked, looked at me. For a fraction of a second, something passed across her face. Guilt, maybe, or sadness. Then Ryan's voice boomed from the living room. Natalie, come here. I need you to verify something. She walked past me without a word. And I stood alone in the kitchen. The same kitchen where Dorothy and I had shared 32 years of morning coffee. Where Natalie took her first steps. Where I had given her that ticket 3 days ago with love in my heart. I stood there for a long time, feeling something settle into my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. A cold, clear recognition. I did not exist to them. I was furniture. A lamp they forgot to unplug. A ghost in my own house. I went back to my bedroom, closed the door, sat at my desk and opened Journal 40. Saturday, March 8th, 2025, 7:43 a.m. The ticket won. $90 million. Neither of them looked at me. Not once. Ryan took the ticket from Natalie's hand within seconds. He is already calling lawyers. He has not thanked me. Has not acknowledged that I bought the ticket. Has not acknowledged that I exist. I gave that ticket to my daughter as a gift for her mother's birthday, and now it belongs to him. Everything always belongs to him. I closed the journal. But I did not close my eyes. I was wide awake. More awake than I had been in years. For the rest of that day, I stayed in my bedroom, and I listened. Ryan made 14 phone calls. I counted. I could hear his voice through the walls. Confident. Commanding. Already spending money that was not yet in his hands. He talked about houses. About cars. About investments. About a trip to the Cayman Islands. And then, at 4:17 in the afternoon, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Ryan was in the hallway, just outside my door. He must not have known I was inside. Or maybe he did not care. He was on the phone, speaking low but not low enough. Yeah, we need to deal with the old man first. He is not on the deed technically, but he has been here forever. We will need to get him out before we can list the property. I am thinking assisted living, or we go the legal route. Competency hearing. Either way, he is gone within the month. My hands went still on the desk. No, he will not fight it, Ryan continued. He is 73, lives in his room, barely talks. I have been documenting stuff for months. Memory lapses, confusion, left the stove on twice. He laughed. A short, ugly sound. Yeah, I know. I wrote it all down. Dates, times, my notes versus his word. Who do you think they will believe? The line went quiet. Then Ryan's footsteps moved away down the hall. I sat at my desk. My heart was hammering. My hands were clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. He had been planning this. Not for days. For months. Maybe longer. The redirected mail. The questions about the deed. The slow erasure of Dorothy from the walls. The isolation. All of it had been leading to this. Ryan had been building a case against me the same way I had been building a case against him. The difference was this. His case was built on lies. Mine was built on truth. I sat there until the house went dark. Until I heard Ryan and Natalie go to bed. Until the only sound was the old clock in the hallway, ticking away the seconds. Then I opened Journal 40 and wrote one sentence. He does not know about the second ticket. He came for me the next evening. Sunday, 7:15. The sun had just set, and the house smelled like the takeout Ryan had ordered for himself and Natalie. No one had offered me any. I had made myself a sandwich earlier and eaten it at my desk while writing. I was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water when I heard his footsteps in the hallway. Deliberate. Heavy. The footsteps of a man who has rehearsed what he is about to say. Ryan appeared in the doorway. He was wearing new clothes. A polo shirt I had never seen before. Pressed slacks. He had gotten a haircut that afternoon. I could smell the cologne. He looked like a man preparing for a job interview. Or a performance. He pulled out a chair and sat down across from me at the table. His hands were folded. His back was straight. His eyes were different. The casual disregard was gone. In its place was something harder, colder, the look of a man who believes he holds all the cards. "George," he said, "we need to talk." I set my glass down on the table. "All right, our situation has changed. Significantly. Natalie and I have come into some money, and we are making plans for the future. Big plans. And those plans do not include this house in its current state." I said nothing. I just watched him. Ryan leaned forward. "Here is what is going to happen. You are going to sign over the deed to this property. We are going to sell it. I have already been in contact with a developer who is interested. 2.1 million. After the sale, we will set you up in a very nice assisted living community. Oak Tree Gardens, out on Skidaway Island. Beautiful place. Full medical staff. You will be comfortable. This is my house," I said quietly. "Not for long." Ryan's voice did not waver. "You have 72 hours, George. Sign the deed by Wednesday. If you do not, we will pursue legal channels. Competency, evaluation, guardianship petition. I have documentation going back 8 months showing a clear pattern of cognitive decline. Memory loss. Confusion. Inability to manage basic tasks. Those are lies." Ryan smiled. Not a kind smile. The smile of a man who knows the game is rigged in his favor. Maybe. But I have dates. Times. Specific incidents. Witnesses. My word against yours. And George, look at you. 73 years old. Living in your room, barely speaking to anyone. A judge will look at you and see exactly what I want them to see. A frail old man who cannot take care of himself anymore. My jaw tightened. But I kept my hands still. My breathing even. "And Natalie?" I asked. "Does she know about this?" Ryan's smile widened. "Natalie agrees with me. She is worried about you, George. We both are. This is the best thing for everyone." I looked past Ryan toward the hallway. Natalie was standing there, just barely visible in the shadow. Her arms wrapped around herself. Her face pale. She was watching, but she said nothing. She did not meet my eyes. I looked back at Ryan. 72 hours. 72 hours. After that, we do this the hard way. And trust me, George, the hard way will be much worse for you. He stood up, adjusted his collar. Looked down at me the way you look at something you are about to throw away. Sleep on it, he said. But do not take too long. The clock is already ticking. He walked out. Natalie was gone from the hallway. I heard their bedroom door close. Then murmuring. Ryan's voice low and steady. Natalie's silent. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. 10 years. 10 years I had housed this man, fed him, tolerated him, loved my daughter enough to endure him. And this was what I received. A deadline, a threat, an eviction from my own life. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, closed the door. I sat on Dorothy's side of the bed. My side faced the window. Her side faced the nightstand with her reading glasses and the small framed photograph of us at the beach in 1995. Natalie was 7 in that photo, sitting on my shoulders. All of us laughing. I opened the nightstand drawer and pulled out Journal 40. I turned to the page marked March 5th, Dorothy's birthday. And there it was, the lottery ticket, pressed flat between the pages, right where I had left it. My hands were steady now. I pulled the ticket out and held it up to the bedside lamp. The numbers were printed clearly in blue ink. 6 numbers. I read them slowly. Then I picked up my phone and searched for the Mega Millions drawing results from 3 nights ago. The winning numbers appeared on the screen. I held my ticket beside the phone and compared them. One by one. First number, match. Second number, match. Third number, match. Fourth number, match. Fifth number, match. Megaball. Match. Every single number, a perfect match. My ticket was the winning ticket. I sat there, my heart pounding, my mind racing. Then I pulled out my phone again and looked up one more thing. The Mega Millions rules. Multiple tickets purchased in the same drawing, with the same numbers. I had bought 2 tickets in the same transaction, same machine. But the machine generates random numbers for each ticket. Each ticket had a different set of numbers, which meant only one ticket had the winning numbers. And it was not the one I gave Natalie. I checked a 3rd time, then a 4th. The numbers on my ticket matched the winning draw perfectly. The ticket Natalie had, the one Ryan was already claiming, had a different set of numbers. I could not know those numbers exactly without seeing her ticket, but I knew mine. And mine was the winner. Ryan was about to file a claim on a ticket worth nothing. I sat back on the bed. And for the first time in 10 years, I smiled. A real smile. Wide and reckless and full of something I had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. I looked at the photograph on the nightstand. Dorothy. Natalie. Me. All of us young and happy and unbroken. I see him, Dorothy. I whispered. I see everything he is. And now I have the proof. I picked up my phone. It was 11:14 at night. I dialed Milton's number. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice thick with sleep. George? What is wrong? It is the middle of the night. Milton, I said. My voice was shaking. Not with fear, with something fiercer. I need your help. Right now. Ryan just gave me 72 hours to leave my own house. He is threatening guardianship. Competency hearings. He says he has documentation. Milton was quiet for 1 second. Then his voice changed. Alert. Sharp. The professor who could still command a lecture hall. What do you need? I need you to know something. The second lottery ticket. The one I kept. Milton. It is the winning ticket. Not Natalie's. Mine. Ryan is claiming a ticket that did not win. Silence. Then Milton exhaled slowly. Come to my house, he said. Right now. Bring the ticket. Bring the receipt. Bring everything. I am on my way. I walked the 3 blocks to Milton's house in the dark. Gordon Street was quiet. The live oaks overhead blocked out the streetlights, their branches draped in Spanish moss that looked like curtains in the moonlight. My shoes clicked against the sidewalk. The ticket was in my jacket pocket. The receipt was in my wallet. Journal 40 was tucked under my arm. Milton was waiting on his front porch in his bathrobe, a cup of coffee already in his hand. Claudia stood behind him in the doorway, her silver hair loose around her shoulders. She looked worried. "Get inside," Milton said. No humor in his voice tonight. All business. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Milton and I had played chess 100 times. Claudia poured me coffee without asking. I set the journal down, pulled out the ticket, pulled out the receipt, laid everything on the table. Then I told them everything. Ryan's ultimatum, the 72 hours, the developer, Oak Tree Gardens, the competency threats, the documentation he claimed to have, and then the ticket, my ticket. The real winner. Milton examined the receipt, held it up to the kitchen light. One transaction, 2 tickets, $4. Your debit card, your name. He set it down. "George, this is ironclad. You purchased both tickets. Under Georgia law, the purchaser is the owner unless there is a signed transfer agreement." "There is no agreement," I said. I just handed it to her. "Then Ryan is claiming a losing ticket and does not even know it." Milton shook his head slowly. That arrogant fool. Claudia had been listening with her arms crossed. Now she picked up her phone from the counter. "We need a lawyer, a real one. Not some ambulance chaser. Someone who will tear that man apart." She scrolled through her contacts, then stopped, looked at Milton. "Marcus?" Milton's eyes lit up. "Marcus Townsend." "Yes." "Perfect." Claudia turned to me. "Do you remember Marcus? He was in your AP history class. 1997. Tall boy. Sat in the front row. Asked more questions than anyone else. I searched my memory. 1997. Front row. Then it clicked. Marcus Townsend. Smart. Relentless. Wrote a senior thesis on civil rights law that was better than most college papers I had read. He once told me after class that I was the reason he wanted to become a lawyer. That my teaching had shown him that justice was not automatic. It had to be fought for. "I remember him," I said. "He is a partner now," Claudia said. "Townsend and Garrett. Real estate and property law. One of the top firms in Georgia. His office is in Atlanta, but he handles cases all over the state." She dialed. It rang 5 times. Then a deep voice, groggy with sleep. "Aunt Claudia? It is midnight. Is everything okay? Marcus, honey. I am sorry to call so late, but we have an emergency. It is our neighbor, George Whitfield. Your old teacher. He needs help." There was a pause. When Marcus spoke again, the sleepiness was gone. "Mr. Whitfield? AP History? What happened?" Claudia handed me the phone. I told Marcus everything. Concise. Clear. The way I used to present a lesson plan to the department head. Facts in order. Evidence listed. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then Marcus said, "Mr. Whitfield, you changed my life. I will be in Savannah by morning. Do not sign anything. Do not speak to Ryan. Do not leave that house. I am coming." He hung up. I handed the phone back to Claudia. She squeezed my hand. "You are going to be all right, George." I stayed at Milton's house that night. Slept in their guest room for 3 hours. Could not manage more. At 5:30 in the morning I was awake, staring at the ceiling, running through timelines in my head. At 6, I borrowed Milton's laptop and searched the address of my house. 714 Abercorn Street, Savannah, Georgia. The listing appeared on Zillow. Listed 2 days ago. Seller, R. Mercer. Price, $2.1 million. Description: historic Victorian, in prime Savannah location. Ideal for development or renovation. Seller motivated. Ryan had listed my house for sale, while I was still living in it. While the deed was still in my name, He had listed it under his name, as if it were already his. I stared at the screen. My jaw clenched. Milton appeared behind me with coffee. "What is it?" he asked. I turned the laptop toward him. He looked at the screen for a long moment. Then he said a word I will not repeat in polite company. Marcus arrived at 1:30 that afternoon. He drove from Atlanta in 3 hours. He was 45 now. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored Navy suit, even on a Monday. He shook my hand with both of his and held it. His eyes were serious. "Varm, Mr. Whitfield," he said. "It is an honor to see you again. I wish it were under better circumstances. So do we, Marcus. So do we." We sat at Milton's dining table for 4 hours. Marcus reviewed everything. The journal entries, the receipt, the ticket, the Zillow listing, my bank statements showing the redirected mail, the post office records showing the forged power of attorney used to change my mailing address. Then Marcus found something else. He ran a credit check using information I provided. My social security number, my date of birth. 2 credit cards had been opened in my name. One in January of 2022, one in August of 2023. Combined balance, $47,000. Cards I had never applied for, never used, never seen. Marcus set down his pen and looked at me across the table. His expression had changed. Harder now. The lawyer, not the student. "Mr. Whitfield, this is not a family dispute. This is a criminal enterprise. Identity theft, forgery, fraud, attempted larceny of real property. This man has been systematically stealing your identity and your assets for years." He stood up and paced to the window. "We are not just going to win your lottery money back. We are going to put him in prison." Marcus worked through the night. I dozed on Milton's couch while he typed, made calls, drafted documents. By 7 the next morning, Tuesday, he had prepared everything. "I am filing 4 actions simultaneously," Marcus said, straightening his tie. "First, a lottery ownership dispute with the Georgia Lottery Commission. Second, a criminal fraud complaint with the Chatham County District Attorney. Third, a report to the Savannah Historic Preservation Commission regarding unauthorized alterations to a registered property. And fourth, a federal identity theft charge through the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center." He looked at me. "When Ryan wakes up Wednesday morning, his 72-hour deadline, he is going to find out that every door he thought was open has been slammed shut and locked." I stood up from the couch. My bones ached from sleeping on it, but something in my chest felt light, powerful, the way I used to feel walking into a classroom on the first day of school. "Do it," I said. Marcus smiled. "Consider it done, Mr. Whitfield. Class is back in session." Ryan's 72-hour deadline was Wednesday. He did not make it that far. Tuesday morning, 9:15. Someone knocked on the front door. A firm, official knock. 3 measured raps. I was in the kitchen drinking coffee. Ryan and Natalie were upstairs. I set my cup down and walked to the door. A woman stood on the porch. Early 40s. Dark hair pulled back. Tired eyes. A clipboard in one hand and a county ID badge clipped to her jacket. Behind her, a white sedan with a Chatham County seal on the door was parked at the curb. "Mr. George Whitfield?" she asked. "Yes. My name is Lisa Palmer. I am an investigator with Chatham County Adult Protective Services. We received a report regarding your welfare, and I need to conduct an assessment. May I come in?" My stomach tightened. Ryan. He had not even waited for his deadline to expire. He had called them preemptively, filed a report, tried to get the system moving before I could fight back, but he was too late. The system was already moving against him. "Of course," I said. "Please come in." Lisa walked through the house slowly. She checked the kitchen first. Clean counters. Stocked refrigerator. Fresh produce. Labeled containers. Nothing expired. The stove was spotless. She checked the oven. Off. She ran her finger along the counter edge. Do you cook for yourself, Mr. Whitfield? Every day. Have been for 60 years. She checked the bathroom. Clean. Organized. Medications lined up in the cabinet, each with a current date. Blood pressure. Cholesterol. Nothing unusual for a man my age. She checked my bedroom. Bed made. Clothes folded. Desk neat. Journals stacked on the shelf. Spines labeled by year. Lisa paused at the desk. She picked up Journal 40 and looked at it. May I? Go ahead. She opened to a random page and read for a moment. Her eyebrows rose slightly. She flipped to another page. Then another. She closed it carefully and set it back. Mr. Whitfield, you write in this every day? Every day since 1984. 40 years. She made a note on her clipboard. Then we walked out to the backyard. The garden was tidy. The small workshop I had set up in the detached garage was organized. Tools on pegboards. Workbench clean. A half-finished birdhouse sat on the bench, walnut and cedar, joints precise. Lisa examined it. You made this? Keeps my hands busy. She set it down gently and turned to me. Mr. Whitfield, the report we received described a man experiencing significant cognitive decline, memory loss, confusion, inability to manage daily tasks. She paused. I have been doing this work for 14 years. What I see here is the exact opposite of that report. The report is false, I said. Filed by my son-in-law. We are in a financial dispute. Lisa nodded slowly. She did not seem surprised. I will need to interview some people who know you. Neighbors. Friends. Your doctor, if possible. Of course. Whatever you need. She interviewed Milton and Claudia that afternoon. Then, Pastor James Coleman at First Baptist Church. All three said the same thing. George Whitfield was sharp, capable, independent, and being targeted by a man who wanted his money. By Thursday, Lisa called. Mr. Whitfield, I am closing your case. The report is unsubstantiated. My finding is that this appears to be a malicious filing, connected to a financial dispute. I am noting that in my report, if Mr. Mercer files another complaint without legitimate cause, there will be consequences. One down. The same week, the Savannah Historic Preservation Commission sent their inspector to 714 Abercorn Street. Marcus had filed the complaint Monday. By Wednesday, a woman named Dr. Patricia Holloway, the commission's chief architectural historian, arrived with a camera and a checklist. Ryan was not home. I let her in. She spent 2 hours going room by room, comparing the current state of the house against the registry photographs from 1992. The photographs Dorothy had submitted when we completed the restoration. 14 violations. 14 alterations made without permit or approval in a designated historic district property. Original windows replaced with vinyl. Crown molding removed. Period-appropriate light fixtures replaced with modern recessed lighting. Original plaster walls covered with drywall. The wrought iron porch railing replaced with aluminum. Each violation carried a fine. Each required restoration to original condition. Total penalty, $180,000. The notice arrived at the house on Friday. Ryan opened it at the kitchen table. I was in the hallway. I heard the sound of paper tearing, then his chair scraping back hard against the floor. He found me in the hallway 30 seconds later. His face was purple. A vein pulsed in his temple. His fists were clenched. You did this, he said through his teeth. You reported me to the preservation board. I looked at him calmly. You reported yourself, Ryan. Every nail you pulled from this house. Every window you replaced. Every piece of history you ripped out and threw away. I documented it all. Journal 38. Journal 39. Every date. Every alteration. Every violation. Ryan stepped closer. His breath was hot. His voice shook. You think you are clever, old man? You think your little notebooks scare me? They should. For a moment, I thought he might hit me. His arm twitched. His jaw locked. But he did not. He turned and walked away. His footsteps pounded up the stairs. I heard the bedroom door slam. That night, at 11:40, I was in bed reading when I heard it. A crash, violent and sharp. Glass, shattering. Then, Natalie screaming. A short, piercing scream, followed by sobbing. I got out of bed and walked quickly to the dining room. The overhead light was on. Ryan stood in the center of the room, his right hand bleeding. On the floor, scattered in 100 pieces across the hardwood, was the stained glass panel from the dining room window, the original 1892 stained glass. The piece Dorothy had spent 3 months restoring by hand, matching colors from archival photographs, fitting each fragment together like a puzzle. Blue and gold. Her favorite colors. Destroyed. Natalie stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming. Ryan looked at me. His eyes were wild, unhinged. Blood dripped from his knuckles onto the floor. This is your fault, he hissed. All of this. I said nothing. I knelt down and picked up one shard of glass, blue and gold. I held it in my palm and felt its weight. Dorothy's hands had touched this piece, had placed it carefully, had held it up to the light. I stood up, walked back to my bedroom, closed the door, and picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had not used in 5 years. It rang twice. Hello? A woman's voice. Young. Alert. Despite the hour. Rachel, I said. This is George Whitfield, your AP history teacher. A pause. Then, warmth. Mr. Whitfield? Oh my God. It has been years. Are you okay? No, I said. I am not. Rachel, I need your help. I have a story that needs to be told, and I think you are the right person to tell it. Rachel Nguyen graduated from my AP history class in 2009. She was 16 years old, sat in the 3rd row by the window. Small, quiet at first. The kind of student who watches everything and says nothing for the first 2 weeks. Then one day she raised her hand during a discussion about the Pentagon Papers and delivered a 3-minute argument about the ethics of whistleblowing that silenced the entire room, including me. After class, I told her she should consider journalism. She looked at me with those sharp, dark eyes and said, I already am, Mr. Whitfield. I've been writing for the school paper since freshman year. By senior year, Rachel was editor of the school paper and had won 2 state awards for investigative reporting. She wrote a piece about misallocated funds in the Chatham County School District that got picked up by the Savannah Morning News. She was 17. Now she was 34. An investigative journalist at that same paper, specializing in fraud, corruption, and institutional abuse. She had won a Georgia Press Association award 2 years ago for a series on elder exploitation in nursing homes across the state. When I called her that night, she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, Mr. Whitfield, I am coming to Savannah tomorrow. Can you meet me? Yes. Bring everything you have. Journals. Documents. Names. I want all of it. She arrived the next afternoon. We met at a coffee shop on River Street, away from the house, away from Ryan. The place was called Huey's. Red brick walls. Jazz playing low. The smell of chicory coffee and river air drifting through the open windows. Rachel walked in and I almost did not recognize her. She was taller than I remembered. Sharp-featured. Professional. Black blazer. Notebook in hand. Recorder in her pocket. But when she saw me, her composure cracked. Just for a second. Mr. Whitfield. She crossed the room quickly and hugged me. Not a professional handshake. A hug. The kind a student gives a teacher who changed their life. God, it is so good to see you. You too, Rachel. You turned out exactly as I expected. She laughed. Then her face went serious. She sat down across from me, opened her notebook, and clicked her pen. Tell me everything. From the beginning. So I did. 2 hours. 3 cups of coffee. I told her about Dorothy, about the house, about Ryan moving in, about the 10 years of slow erasure, the redirected mail, the forged power of attorney at the post office, the lottery tickets, the threats, the 72 hours, the APS report, the stained glass. I showed her excerpts from the journals. Not all of them. Selected entries, dates and times, specific quotes from Ryan, specific actions, documented with precision. 10 years of evidence written in my careful teacher's hand. Rachel read them slowly. Her jaw tightened with each page. When she looked up, her eyes were blazing. This is systematic, she said. This is not a family disagreement. This is financial predation. Calculated, long-term exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I am not vulnerable, I said. Rachel smiled. No, Mr. Whitfield. You are not. That is exactly what makes this story so powerful. You documented everything. You saw it happening, and you wrote it down. Most victims do not have that. You do. She flipped to a new page in her notebook. I need to verify independently. I cannot rely solely on your account. I need other sources. She need to 42%. Whatever you need. Over the next 4 days, Rachel worked. She spoke to Milton and Claudia. She spoke to Pastor Coleman. She spoke to Thomas Avery at Chapter and Verse, who confirmed I bought the lottery tickets and appeared completely coherent. She spoke to neighbors on Abercorn Street who had watched Ryan bring in construction crews without permits. Then she dug into Ryan's past. And she found what I had long suspected but never confirmed. Ryan Mercer had been terminated from Peachtree Commercial Group in Atlanta in November of 2015. Not laid off. Terminated. The official reason was restructuring, but Rachel found a former colleague willing to talk off the record. He was let go for financial irregularities, the source told her. There were discrepancies in client accounts he managed. Nothing was ever prosecuted because the company did not want the publicity, but everyone in the office knew. Ryan was skimming. He had been fired for stealing. And then he had come to live in my house, rent-free, for 10 years, planning the next theft. Rachel also pulled records from the Chatham County Clerk's office. The Zillow listing. The developer who had expressed interest, a company called Coastal Meridian LLC, which specialized in buying historic properties, demolishing them, and building condominiums. They had already destroyed 2 registered homes in the district in the past 5 years. Ryan was not just trying to sell my house. He was trying to sell it to people who would erase it from existence. The way he had tried to erase Dorothy. The way he had tried to erase me. Rachel called me on Friday evening. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the energy underneath. The excitement of a journalist who knows she has something explosive. The article is done, she said. 4,000 words. I am calling it, The Teacher They Tried to Erase. It goes through everything. The lottery, the fraud, the identity theft, the preservation violations, Ryan's history, your journals, the community support, everything. When does it publish? Sunday morning. 6 a.m. Online first, then print edition, Monday. 3 days before your court hearing. 3 days before the hearing. The timing was deliberate. Rachel was a student of mine. She understood strategy. She understood that information released at the right moment has exponential power. Mr. Whitfield, she said, once this goes live, there is no taking it back. Ryan will know. Everyone will know. Your life will not be private anymore. My life stopped being private the moment Ryan tried to steal it. Are you sure? I thought about Dorothy's stained glass scattered on the dining room floor, about her painting in the trash, about 10 years of silence and invisibility, about the man who stood in my kitchen and told me I had 72 hours to leave my own home. I have been ready for 10 years, Rachel. Publish it. Yes, sir, she said, and I could hear her smiling. Consider it done. I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair at Milton's dining table. Milton was across from me, pretending to read a book, but obviously listening. Well, he asked. Sunday morning, I said. The story drops Sunday morning. Milton closed his book. And then Ryan finds out what happens when you try to erase a man who spent his whole life teaching people to find the truth. Saturday night, 9:14. I was sitting in Milton's living room, reading a book I could not concentrate on. Milton was in his armchair doing the crossword. Claudia had gone to bed an hour earlier. The house was quiet, except for the sound of Milton's pen scratching at the newspaper, then a knock at the front door. Soft, hesitant. Not the knock of a salesman or a neighbor stopping by. The knock of someone who was not sure they had the right to be there. Milton looked at me over his reading glasses. I stood up and walked to the door. I opened it. And there was Natalie. She stood on the porch in the yellow glow of Milton's porch light. A small suitcase beside her. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was blotchy and swollen. She had been crying for a long time, hours maybe. Her eyes were red and raw. And when she saw me, her chin trembled, and she pressed her hand over her mouth to stop the sob from coming out. "Daddy," she whispered. I could not move. I just stood there, looking at my daughter. My little girl who used to sit on my shoulders, who used to dance with Dorothy in the kitchen, who had been a stranger to me for 10 years. "Come inside," I said. She picked up her suitcase and walked past me into the hallway. I closed the door behind her. Milton appeared in the living room doorway. He took one look at Natalie, nodded once, and disappeared into the kitchen to make coffee. Giving us space, we sat on the couch. Natalie set her suitcase on the floor and clasped her hands together so tightly her knuckles went white. She stared at the carpet for a long time before she spoke. "I left him," she said. "Tonight. I packed a bag and I left." "What happened?" She shook her head, not dismissing the question, trying to find the words. "I found something. On his laptop. He left it open on the counter." She swallowed. "Emails. Between him and that developer. Coastal Meridian. They have been talking for 8 months, Dad. 8 months. He has been planning to sell the house since last summer. Before the lottery. Before any of this. 8 months." The timeline clicked into place. The redirected mail. The questions about the deed. The Zillow listing. All of it. Pre-planned. The lottery win had just accelerated what Ryan was already building. "There is more," Natalie continued. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He made me sign things. Over the years, documents I did not read. He said they were tax forms. Joint account paperwork. I did not question it." She looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with shame. "I think some of those documents were about you, Dad. About the house. About your finances. I do not know what I signed." My chest tightened, but I kept my face calm. "That is not your fault, Natalie. It is. I should have read them. I should have questioned him. I should have." She broke. The sob came out hard and ragged, and she covered her face with both hands. "He told me, you hated us. He said you wanted us gone but were too polite to say it. He said you talked about us to the neighbors. He said you were getting old and bitter and confused. And I believed him, Dad. For 10 years I believed him, instead of believing my own father." I reached over and put my hand on her shoulder. She flinched at first. Then she leaned into me, her head against my chest, crying the way she had cried as a child. deep, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere far beneath the surface. "I am so sorry," she said between breaths. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry." I held her. My daughter. My little girl. I held her and let her cry. And I said the only thing that mattered. "I forgive you." She cried harder. "But Natalie." I pulled back gently so I could look at her face. "Forgiveness does not mean we go back to how things were. We have a long road ahead. We need honesty, complete honesty, starting now." She nodded, wiped her face with her sleeve. "I will tell you everything, whatever you need, and I will testify. In court, against him. I will tell them what he did." Those words. I had not expected them. "Are you sure? He destroyed Mom's stained glass, Dad." Her voice broke again, but she pushed through. "He stood there with blood on his hands and glass on the floor, and he smiled. He smiled at me and said, 'Now your father knows what happens when you cross me.'" She shook her head. That was when I knew. That was when I finally saw him for what he is. We talked for another hour. Natalie told me things I had suspected but never confirmed. That Ryan had intercepted letters from my doctor. That he had told her I was showing signs of dementia. That he had coached her on what to say if social services ever came asking. That he had spent the past year slowly convincing her that putting me in assisted living was an act of compassion. Every word was a knife. But every word was also a key. Unlocking doors I needed open. Milton brought coffee. Claudia came out in her robe and sat with Natalie, holding her hand, saying nothing, just being present. At midnight, Natalie fell asleep on the couch with a blanket Claudia tucked around her. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. Sunday morning, 6 a.m. Rachel's article went live. By noon, it had been shared 4,000 times. By evening, 11,000. The comments section filled with hundreds of messages. Former students, community members, strangers who recognized the pattern of abuse. My phone buzzed constantly. Emails poured in. I counted 147 by Monday morning, messages from former students I had not heard from in decades. Lawyers, doctors, teachers, business owners, city council members, all saying the same thing. "Mr. Whitfield, you changed my life. We are with you. What do you need?" One email stood out. Sent Monday afternoon from a Gov address. The subject line read, "From a former student. Dear Mr. Whitfield, I read Rachel Nguyen's article this morning. I cannot comment on pending legal matters. But I want you to know something. You taught me in 1994, room 212. I was 17 and angry at the world, and you were the first adult who treated me like my thoughts mattered. You taught me that justice is not a word in a textbook. It is an action. It requires courage. I see that courage in you now. Respectfully, Judge Patricia Webb, Chatham County Superior Court." I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and sat very still. Wednesday morning arrived. I dressed in the jacket Dorothy had bought me for our 30th anniversary. Dark gray wool. Still fit. Milton drove. Claudia and Natalie rode in the back seat. No one spoke. The only sound was the engine and the morning birds. We turned onto Montgomery Street. The Chatham County Courthouse rose ahead of us. Gray stone, tall columns, the flag moving in the breeze. And on the steps, I saw them, former students, dozens of them, standing in the morning sun with signs and flowers, and worn paperback copies of books I had assigned them 20 years ago. Rachel stood at the front with a camera crew from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution beside her. Milton parked. I got out of the car. My legs felt unsteady, not from weakness, from emotion. 200 people, standing on those steps, waiting for me. And when they saw me, a sound rose from the crowd. Not a cheer, Something quieter. Something warmer. Applause. Steady and growing. 200 pairs of hands. 200 former students saying without words, "We remember you. We are here. You are not alone." I walked toward them, and I was not invisible anymore. I walked through them slowly. The former students parted to let me pass, and as I moved through the crowd, hands reached out. Some shook mine. Some touched my shoulder. Some just nodded. A woman I recognized as Sarah Blackwell, class of 2001, was crying. A man named Jerome Davis, class of 1998, held up a worn copy of Howard Zinn's A People's History and said, "You gave me this book, Mr. Whitfield. It changed everything." I wanted to stop. I wanted to talk to each of them. But Marcus was waiting at the top of the steps. "Time to go inside," he said quietly. I climbed the last few steps. At the courthouse doors, I paused and turned back. 200 faces looked up at me. Some old, some young, all of them there because once, a long time ago, they had sat in my classroom, and I had tried to teach them something that mattered. "Thank you," I said. My voice was not loud enough for all of them to hear, but the ones closest nodded. That was enough. Marcus held the door. I walked inside. The courtroom of Chatham County Superior Court was on the second floor. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, tall windows that let in slants of morning light. The gallery had 120 seats arranged in rows behind a low wooden railing. Every single seat was taken. Standing room along the back wall was packed 3 deep. Marcus and I walked down the center aisle to the plaintiff's table on the left. I kept my eyes forward, my back straight, the way Dorothy always told me to walk when I was nervous. "Shoulders back, George. You are a Whitfield." I sat down. Marcus set his briefcase on the table and opened it with practiced efficiency. Files, documents, folders, labeled and tabbed. He was ready. He had been ready for days. Across the aisle, at the defendant's table, sat Ryan. He was wearing a suit I had never seen before. Charcoal gray. New. Expensive. His hair was freshly cut. His posture was rigid. Controlled. But his face was pale, and his eyes kept moving, scanning the crowd behind him, counting the people who had come to stand against him. Beside him sat his lawyer, David Kern, mid-50s, thin, wire-rimmed glasses, a journeyman attorney from a small firm downtown. Not the high-powered counsel Ryan had probably wanted. Marcus had told me that 2 larger firms had declined to represent Ryan after Rachel's article published. Kern was his third choice. Natalie sat in the gallery behind me. 3rd row. Claudia beside her, holding her hand. Milton sat on the other side of Claudia. Pastor Coleman was 2 rows back. Rachel sat near the wall with her notebook open. At exactly 10 o'clock, the side door opened. A clerk stepped out. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Patricia Webb presiding. The room stood. Judge Webb entered. She was 53. Tall. Composed. Dark hair streaked with silver. Pulled back neatly. She wore her robes with the kind of authority that comes from decades of earned respect. Her expression was neutral, professional. She did not look at me. She did not look at Ryan. She looked straight ahead as she climbed to the bench and sat. "Be seated," she said. "Visat." Judge Webb opened a folder and reviewed it for a long moment. Then she looked up. "This court is hearing the matter of Whitfield versus Mercer, case number 2025 CV-0417. The dispute concerns ownership of Georgia Lottery ticket number 619-4472-M, purchased on March 5, 2025. She turned to David Kern. "Counsel for the respondent may present opening arguments." Kern stood. He buttoned his jacket, adjusted his glasses. He looked uncomfortable, but professional. "Your Honor, the facts in this matter are simple. On March 5th, Mr. George Whitfield purchased 2 lottery tickets. He brought one home and gave it to his daughter Natalie as a gift. 3 days later, that ticket was drawn as the winning ticket for a $90 million Mega Millions jackpot. At no time was there a condition placed on that gift. No contract. No written agreement. Under Georgia law, a completed gift of personal property does not require documentation. The ticket was given freely, received gratefully, and belongs to Miss Natalie Whitfield Mercer. Kern sat down. Ryan gave a small nod beside him. A studied gesture of confidence. Judge Webb turned to Marcus. Counsel for the petitioner. Marcus stood. He did not rush. He buttoned his jacket slowly, placed both hands on the table, and when he spoke, his voice filled the room the way a pastor's fills a church. Your Honor, Mr. Kern has described a fairy tale. Let me describe reality. He reached into his briefcase and placed the first document on the table. This is the receipt from Chapter and Verse Bookstore, Bull Street, Savannah. Dated March 5, 2025. 2 Mega Millions tickets purchased in a single transaction by Mr. George Whitfield. Paid via debit card. $4 total. He placed a second document beside it. This is Mr. Whitfield's bank statement, confirming the charge. Then Marcus paused. He looked directly at Ryan, and he said the words that changed everything. Your Honor, I need to inform the court of a critical fact. The ticket Mr. Mercer is attempting to claim, the ticket given to Natalie Whitfield Mercer, is not the winning ticket. The room went dead silent. Kern's head snapped toward Marcus. Ryan's face drained of color. Judge Webb leaned forward slightly. Marcus continued, his voice steady. The 2 tickets purchased by Mr. Whitfield contained different number sets. The winning numbers belong to the ticket Mr. Whitfield retained. The ticket given to his daughter contains a different set of numbers and did not win. Mr. Mercer has been attempting to claim a prize on a non-winning ticket. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Judge Webb tapped her pen once. Silence returned. But that is only the beginning, Marcus said. He reached into his briefcase again. This time, he lifted a stack of notebooks. 40 of them. Black covers. Spines, labeled by year. He carried them to the evidence table and set them down with a deliberate thud that echoed through the courtroom. These are 40 journals, written daily by Mr. Whitfield, for 40 consecutive years. They document everything, including 10 years of systematic fraud, identity theft, financial manipulation, and elder exploitation committed by Ryan Mercer while living rent-free in my client's home. Marcus opened the top journal to a marked page. Entry dated March 14, 2021. Quote, Ryan had the back fence replaced without informing me. He did not consult me. This is my property. End quote. He flipped to another tab. August 9, 2021. Quote, overheard Ryan on the phone discussing converting the upstairs into a rental unit. Making plans for my house without including me. End quote. He closed the journal and looked at Judge Webb. Your Honor, I have 147 similar entries spanning 10 years. Documented evidence of identity theft totaling $47,000 across 2 fraudulently opened credit cards. Evidence of a forged power of attorney used to redirect my client's mail. Evidence of an unauthorized real estate listing on Zillow attempting to sell a registered historic district property for $2.1 million to a demolition developer. And evidence of 14 violations of the Savannah Historic Preservation Code resulting in fines of $180,000. Marcus placed his hands on the stack of journals. 40 journals. 40 years of a man's life. Written with absolute clarity and absolute discipline. This is not the work of a man with cognitive decline, Your Honor. This is the work of a man who remembers everything. He let that settle. Then he returned to his seat. The courtroom was silent. Ryan was gripping the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Kern leaned toward him and whispered something urgent. Ryan shook his head. Once. Twice. His jaw was locked. Then from behind me, a voice, clear and steady and trembling only slightly. "Your Honor." Natalie stood in the gallery. "I would like to testify." Judge Webb looked at Natalie, then at Marcus, then at Kern. "Does the petitioner have any objection to this witness?" "None, Your Honor," Marcus said. "We welcome it. Miss Whitfield Mercer, please approach the stand." Natalie stepped out of the gallery. Claudia squeezed her hand as she passed. Natalie walked down the center aisle without looking at Ryan. She was sworn in. She sat. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, but her voice was clear. Judge Webb said gently, "In your own words." Natalie turned and looked directly at Ryan. 3 words. "He lied." Everything. The courtroom went still. For 10 years, my husband told me that my father hated us, that Dad resented us living in his house, that he talked about us behind our backs to the neighbors. She turned back to the judge. None of it was true. Not one word. My father never said a single cruel thing about us. Not once in 10 years. Ryan made sure I never knew. Her voice gained strength. Ryan isolated my father deliberately. He moved Dad's things. He rearranged the house to make Dad feel like a guest. He stopped including him in meals, conversations, decisions. He made my father invisible in his own home, and he made me complicit. She paused, swallowed hard. Ryan made me sign documents I did not read. He said they were tax forms. I now believe some were used to open credit cards in my father's name. When Adult Protective Services came, Ryan coached me on what to say. He told me to describe Dad as forgetful, confused, declining. None of it was true. He invented those incidents. I repeated them because I was afraid of him. She faced Ryan again, her eyes wet but steady. "You told me my father was the enemy, but he was the only person in that house who never lied to me. You lied every single day for 10 years. Ryan shot to his feet. His chair screeched against the floor. "She is lying." His voice was raw, uncontrolled. "She is mentally unstable. This whole thing is a circus." Judge Webb's gavel came down hard. "Mr. Mercer, sit down immediately, or I will hold you in contempt." Kern grabbed Ryan's arm and pulled him into his seat. Ryan was breathing hard, his eyes darting around the room. 200 faces stared back, none friendly. Kern stood slowly, straightened his glasses, and said the words that ended it. "Your Honor, I respectfully request permission to withdraw as counsel. Given the testimony and evidence presented, I cannot in good conscience continue. Ethical obligations require my withdrawal." "Granted," Judge Webb said. "Mr. Mercer, you are now without legal representation. Do you wish to request a continuance?" Ryan sat alone, white-faced, his lawyer already packing his briefcase. "No," Ryan said. Hoarse, defeated. Judge Webb removed her glasses and set them on the bench. "Before I issue my ruling, I want to say something. Not as a judge, as a person." She paused. "In 1994, I sat in room 212 of Savannah Arts Academy. I was 17, angry, failing most of my classes. And a teacher named George Whitfield looked at me and said, 'Patricia, I do not accept mediocrity from students I believe are exceptional, and I believe you are exceptional.'" She replaced her glasses. "I share this not because it influences my ruling. The law is clear regardless, but because this courtroom should understand the kind of man whose dignity was nearly stolen." She opened her folder. Based on the evidence presented, including the purchase receipt, the Lottery Commission's verification that winning numbers correspond to the ticket retained by Mr. Whitfield, and the testimony of Miss Whitfield Mercer, I rule in favor of the petitioner. Mr. George Whitfield is the rightful owner of the winning ticket. The respondent's claim is dismissed. She looked at Ryan. "Additionally, I am referring all criminal evidence to the district attorney for prosecution. Identity theft, forgery, fraud, historic preservation violations. She nodded toward the back. 2 officers stepped forward. Mr. Mercer, please stand. Ryan stood rigid. The officers approached, hands behind his back. The click of handcuffs echoed through the silent courtroom. As they led him past me, I stood. Ryan. He stopped, turned his head. His eyes met mine. Empty. Hollow. I spoke quietly, just loud enough for him to hear. I gave you 10 years of free rent, Ryan. 10 years under my roof. All I ever asked was basic respect. You could not even give me that. He said nothing. The officers guided him through the side door. It closed with a heavy click. Judge Webb tapped her gavel. This court is adjourned. The room moved. People standing. Marcus beside me, hand on my shoulder. Natalie coming down the aisle, reaching for me. But I could not hear any of them, only the silence of something finally being over. We walked out, down the hallway, through the lobby, into the afternoon sun. 200 former students, still there, still waiting. And when they saw me, the sound began. Not a roar. Applause. Steady, warm, growing. 200 pairs of hands. 200 people who remembered their teacher. I stood on those courthouse steps with the sun on my face and my daughter's hand in mine. And I cried. Not because I had won $90 million. Not because Ryan was gone. I cried because Dorothy would have loved this. Every single moment of it. The money arrived in my account on a Thursday morning. $45 million after taxes. I stared at the number on my laptop screen for a long time. 9 digits. More money than I could have earned in 10 lifetimes of teaching. I closed the laptop and looked at Dorothy's painting, leaning against the wall. The watercolor of our house. White porch. Magnolia tree. Morning light through the stained glass. Well, Dorothy, I said to the empty room. What do we do now? The weeks that followed were strange. Quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar after so much chaos. Ryan was in custody at the Chatham County Detention Center. Denied bail. The judge called him a flight risk given the financial crimes. His trial was scheduled for September. 4 felony charges: identity theft, forgery, fraud, violation of historic preservation statutes. Marcus estimated he would serve between 8 and 12 years. I did not think about Ryan much. He had taken enough of my time. Natalie filed for divorce the Monday after the hearing. Uncontested. Ryan signed the papers from his cell without argument. Whatever fight he had left in him was gone. The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. She rented a small apartment on Broughton Street. 1 bedroom. Hardwood floors. A window that overlooked the park. It was not much. She said, that was the point. I need to earn something on my own, Dad. I have not done that in 10 years. She found a job at a nonprofit downtown. Administrative work. $14 an hour. She came home tired every evening, and she was proud of it. I understood. Some things cannot be given. They have to be built. We started having Sunday dinners again. The first one was awkward. I cooked pot roast. Natalie brought a bottle of wine she could barely afford. We sat at my kitchen table, and for the first 10 minutes, neither of us knew what to say. Then Natalie looked around the kitchen. At the walls Dorothy had painted. At the window, where she used to set her watercolors to dry. At the old clock, ticking in the hallway. I missed this, she said quietly. I missed being here. Being with you. I missed feeling like this was home. It is home, I said. It always was. After that, Sundays got easier. We cooked together. Talked. Sometimes about nothing. Sometimes about Dorothy. Sometimes about the years we had lost. It was not perfect. There were silences that lasted too long. Questions I was not ready to ask. Things Natalie was not ready to say. But we were there. Present. Trying. That was enough for now. In May, I hired a restoration team. A real one. Specialists in historic preservation recommended by the Savannah Historical Society. I told them I wanted the house returned to its original condition. Every window. Every piece of molding. Every fixture. Everything Ryan had torn out. Put back. Everything Dorothy had restored. Restored again. They started with the stained glass. A master glazier from Charleston named William Rourke studied Dorothy's original photographs from the Chatham County Archives, the same photographs she had used in 1989. He spent 6 weeks rebuilding the dining room panel piece by piece. Blue and gold, Dorothy's colors. Fitted together with the same lead came technique used in 1892. The day they installed it, I stood in the dining room and watched the morning light come through. The colors fell across the hardwood floor in patterns I remembered. Blue and gold, shifting with the angle of the sun, exactly as it had looked for 30 years when Dorothy was alive. Natalie was beside me. She had come early that morning to watch the installation. We stood together in that colored light, and neither of us spoke for a long time. "It looks like Mom's," she finally whispered. "It is your mom's," I said. "She designed it. She picked the colors. She fit every piece. This is just bringing her back." Natalie wiped her eyes. "What are you going to do with the house, Dad? Are you going to stay?" I had been thinking about that question for weeks. $45 million. I could go anywhere, buy anything, live wherever I wanted. But this house, these walls, this floor that knew my footsteps and Dorothy's and Natalie's, this was not just property. It was memory. It was legacy. "I am going to keep it," I said. "But I am going to change what it means." I told her my plan. The first floor would become a public space, a library, a community archive, a place where people could come to read about Savannah's history, attend lectures, take art classes. The upstairs would remain private. My home, my studio, my journals, and it would carry her name. The Dorothy Whitfield Heritage Library. Natalie listened. Her eyes filled again, but she was smiling. "Dad, that is perfect. Mom would love that. She always said this house belonged to the community as much as it belonged to us." "She was right," I said. "She was always right." We stood in that colored light. Blue and gold on the floor. Dorothy's colors. Dorothy's house. Dorothy's legacy. Continuing. Then Natalie said something I did not expect. She turned to me, and her voice was steady. Certain. The way it sounded when she was young, and telling me what she wanted to be when she grew up. "Dad, I have been thinking about what comes next for me, and I know what I want to do." "What is that?" "I want to go back to school. I want to teach. Like you." My throat closed. I could not speak. All I could do was put my arm around my daughter and hold her, while the morning sun painted the floor in blue and gold. The morning after William Rourke installed the last panel of stained glass, I sat in Dorothy's chair by the dining room window and watched the sunrise pour through the restored blue and gold pattern. The light hit the opposite wall the same way it had in 1992. When Dorothy first showed me how she had matched the cobalt to the original 1,892 fragments she found buried in the garden, I sat there for 20 minutes without moving. I did not cry. I just breathed. That afternoon I called Marcus and told him I wanted to establish a foundation. Not a charity in the traditional sense. Something more specific. Something that would do for others what Milton, Rachel, and my former students had done for me. "What do you want to call it?" Marcus asked. "The Dorothy Whitfield Elder Protection Fund," I said. The name came without hesitation. It had been sitting in my chest for weeks, waiting for me to say it out loud. Marcus connected me with a nonprofit attorney named Grace Okafor, a 38-year-old specialist in foundation law who operated from a small office on Drayton Street. Grace had spent 6 years building elder advocacy programs across coastal Georgia. She understood the architecture of what I wanted before I finished explaining it. Within 2 weeks, we had a structure. The foundation would operate on 3 pillars. First, a legal defense fund, providing free representation to seniors facing financial exploitation by family members. Second, an emergency housing program offering temporary relocation for elders forced from their homes during disputes. Third, an education initiative partnering with local schools to teach students about elder rights, financial literacy, and intergenerational respect. I committed $20 million. Not because the number meant anything specific, but because it was large enough to sustain operations for decades without depending on annual fundraising. Grace estimated the endowment model would generate between $800,000 and $1.2 million annually, enough to serve 40 to 60 cases per year across Chatham, Bryan, and Effingham counties. Milton was the first person I told outside the legal team. We were sitting at our usual table in chapter and verse, the chessboard between us, Thomas wiping down the counter with his usual quiet efficiency. Milton listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. When I finished, he removed his glasses, cleaned them with his shirt, and placed them back on his nose. Dorothy would have done the same thing, he said. Except she would have done it faster and with better stationery. I laughed. He was right on both counts. The Savannah Morning News ran a follow-up piece 2 weeks after the court ruling. Rachel wrote it herself, 1,500 words, titled Mr. Whitfield's Next Chapter. The article described the foundation's mission, quoted Grace on the legal structure, and included statements from 3 former students who had already volunteered as pro bono attorneys. By the end of the first week, the foundation had received an additional $217,000 in unsolicited donations from the community and from readers across Georgia who had followed the original story. Pastor James Coleman offered the First Baptist Church Fellowship Hall for the foundation's first community meeting. 43 people attended on a Wednesday evening in late April. 12 were seniors who described situations remarkably similar to mine. Children who had moved in and never left. Grandchildren who had taken control of finances. Neighbors who had watched someone disappear inside their own home. Each story was different in its details and identical in its architecture. I recognized every pattern because I had lived inside one. I spoke for 11 minutes. I did not prepare remarks. I simply told them what had happened to me, what I had done, and what I wished someone had told me in 2016 when Ryan first started rearranging my kitchen cabinets without asking. The room was silent when I finished. Then a woman in the third row, 71 years old, white hair pulled back, stood and said, "I thought I was the only one." 9 others nodded. That was the moment I understood. The foundation was not about money. It was about breaking isolation. The money was a tool. The real mechanism was permission. Permission to say something was wrong. Permission to ask for help without feeling ashamed. Natalie attended the second meeting in May. She sat in the back row and did not speak. Afterward, she found me in the parking lot and said, "I want to volunteer." I told her she could start by answering phones on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She agreed immediately. She did not cry. She simply nodded, the way she used to nod when she was 9 years old, and I gave her a new book to read. Grace hired a small staff by June. A case manager named Deshaun Williams, 29, who had previously worked at Savannah Legal Aid. An outreach coordinator, Maria Santos, 44, who had spent 15 years in community health, and a part-time administrator, Helen Park, 62, who had retired from Chatham County Social Services and understood the bureaucratic landscape better than anyone I had ever met. The foundation's first active case came on June 12th. An 83-year-old retired postal worker named Curtis Jameson had been locked out of his own bank account by his grandson. Deshaun took the case. Within 9 days, the account was restored. A protective order was filed, and Curtis was connected with a financial advisor who restructured his accounts with dual signature requirements. I visited Curtis at his home on East Broad Street the following week. He lived alone in a shotgun house with a garden full of tomatoes and a porch swing that creaked in a rhythm I found deeply familiar. He thanked me 3 times. I told him he did not owe me thanks. I told him the only debt was forward. Help someone else when you can. He said he would. That night I sat at my desk on the 2nd floor of 714 Abercorn Street and opened a fresh journal. Number 41. The first page was blank. I had not started a new journal since Dorothy died. For 10 years, Journal 40 had been my only companion, my witness, my evidence. Now it was closed, stored in a fireproof safe in Marcus's office, preserved for the September trial. Journal 41 was different. It was not a record of survival. It was a record of building. I wrote the date at the top of the page. Then, I wrote a single sentence below it. Today, the foundation helped its first family. And I remembered why I became a teacher. On the first Saturday of July, I hosted a dinner party at 714 Abercorn Street. Not a foundation event. Not a press opportunity. Just dinner. Milton and Claudia arrived at 6, with a bottle of wine from a vineyard they had visited in North Carolina the previous autumn. Pastor Coleman brought his wife Evelyn and a pecan pie that he swore she had made, but which I suspected came from a bakery on Whitaker Street. Thomas Avery closed chapter and verse early and walked over with a first edition copy of James Baldwin's essays, which he placed on the new library shelf without ceremony. Rachel Nguyen came alone, her notebook deliberately left in her car for the first time since I had known her. Natalie arrived last. She carried a casserole dish with both hands and wore a pale yellow dress I had not seen before. She looked younger than she had in years. Not in her face, which still carried the weight of what she had endured, but in her posture. She stood straight. She walked through the front door without hesitation, without glancing over her shoulder the way she had done for a decade whenever Ryan was in the room. We ate in the dining room. The stained glass window caught the last hour of summer light, throwing blue and gold across the white tablecloth. Dorothy's watercolor hung in the foyer, where it had always belonged, reframed in mahogany by a craftsman on Factor's Walk. I had placed a small brass plate beneath it that read, Dorothy Ann Whitfield, 1947, 2015. She made everything beautiful. The conversation was easy. Milton told a story about a student who had once submitted an entire term paper written in iambic pentameter. Claudia corrected 3 details. Pastor Coleman asked about the foundation's second community meeting, and I told him 37 new attendees had come, including 2 from as far as Brunswick. Rachel mentioned she was working on a longer investigative series about elder financial abuse across the Southeast, with the Whitfield case as its anchor. Thomas said nothing for long stretches, but smiled in a way that filled the silences comfortably. After dessert, Natalie and I stood on the front porch together. The street was quiet. Spanish moss hung from the live oaks in long silver curtains, barely moving in the warm air. Somewhere down the block, a neighbor was playing piano with the windows open. Chopin. Dorothy would have known which etude. I enrolled at Armstrong State, Natalie said. She did not look at me when she said it. She looked at the garden, at the roses Dorothy had planted in 2003 that had somehow survived everything. Education program. I start in August. I did not speak immediately. I let the sentence exist between us for a moment, the way I used to let a classroom question hang in the air before anyone raised a hand. Your mother would be proud, I said. I know, Natalie said. But I am doing it because of you. I put my hand on her shoulder. She leaned into it, just slightly, the way she used to lean against me when she was small, and we would sit on this same porch, watching fireflies after supper. We stood there for a long time without needing to say anything else. The following Monday, I walked to the Chatham County Recorder's office and filed the official deed modification for 714 Abercorn Street. The first floor was now legally designated as the Dorothy Whitfield Heritage Library and Community Center, a public access space operating under the Foundation's charter. The second and third floors remained my private residence. The house was protected under both the Savannah Historic Preservation Ordinance and a conservation easement that would prevent any future owner from altering its character. The building could never be sold to developers. It could never be painted gray. It could never lose its stained glass again. I signed the documents at 10:47 inches the morning. The clerk, a young woman no older than 25, looked at the property address and said, 714 Abercorn. Is that the Whitfield house? From the article? Yes, I said. My grandmother read that story, she said. She called me that same day and asked me to check on her accounts. I smiled. Good, I said. That is exactly what it was for. Walking home, I took the long route through Forsyth Park. The fountain was running. Tourists were photographing the Spanish moss, and a group of college students sat in a circle on the grass, arguing about something with the passionate imprecision of people who had not yet learned how much they did not know. I loved them for it. I had spent 38 years in a classroom watching young people discover that history was not dead weight, but living architecture. Every building, every law, every family had a structure. You could read it if you knew where to look. I had nearly lost mine. 10 years of silence. 10 years of watching someone dismantle the house my wife and I had built with our hands and our hearts. But silence was not the same as absence. Every day I had written in my journal. Every day I had recorded the truth. And when the moment came, the truth had been enough. Ryan Mercer's trial was scheduled for September 15th. Marcus expected a conviction on all 4 counts. The maximum sentence was 12 years. I did not think about Ryan often anymore. He occupied a smaller room in my mind with each passing week, the way all villains eventually shrink once you stop giving them your attention. What I thought about instead was Tuesday chess with Milton, Wednesday calls with Grace about new cases, Thursday evenings reviewing Natalie's course syllabus with her at the kitchen table, Saturday mornings in the garden, pulling weeds from between Dorothy's roses, Sunday dinners with everyone who mattered. I thought about the $90 million, which had become less a number and more a verb. It moved through the foundation into courtrooms and emergency shelters and classrooms. It moved through Natalie's tuition and Deshawn's caseload and Curtis Jameson's restored dignity. It moved the way water moves through roots, invisible, essential, patient. On the last page of Journal 41, I wrote a note to Dorothy. I wrote it the way I had written every journal entry for 40 years in my careful teacher's handwriting. Blue ink. No corrections. Dorothy, the house is safe. Natalie is coming home to teaching. The students remember. And I am still here, still writing, still yours. The light through the glass is exactly the way you left it. I closed the journal. I set my pen on the desk. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt the house breathe around me, not with absence, but with presence. Every room full, every wall remembered, every window letting in the morning.